Do you want to create swarms of pawns circling a volcano of hell, just like this with ease? Well, be prepared to enter the chaotic void of secrets. In this Beyond All Reason blueprint guide, I'm going to show you how to master and scale with blueprints. Tip number 1. How to place blueprints fast with hotkeys. There are critical hotkeys you need to learn when it comes to blueprints. The first is Alt-B to place. Let's do that right now. If you have a decent gaming mouse, I do recommend you reassign this shortcut through its key mapping software, which can be fiddly. I've found what works really well for me is to put Alt-B, which is place blueprint, on this button here, and then have the alignment buttons here and here. Why this works out well is I can also control building alignment when it comes up. How this works in practice is I go to place a blueprint. I can simply press the middle mouse button, a lot easier than pressing Alt-B, a lot quicker when you have to quickly go back and base and micromanage. The second tip is to scroll through blueprints. If you ever go to scroll through the blueprints normally, right, you press place blueprint, you then go, I read the tooltip, Alt bracket to previous or next. Oh, fantastic. I can tell you what, this slows you down about 5 seconds to do all this and then get confused and then you go do something else because you've got other things to do. So that is not the success you need. You need quick wins. And how we do that is very snappily. We press the middle mouse button here and we can press Alt and we can scroll the mouse wheel super fast. That's great if we need to get through a heap of blueprints because we know the tasty ones at blueprint number 100, right? So the scroll wheel might be good. We've only got 4 at the moment. But what's even better, if you've assigned your previous and next mouse wheels, we can do this. Very slow scroll. So I can quickly go, and concisely get where I need to go while pressing the Alt. And be aware the screen will do this if you press Alt and do it. And once we've got the blueprint we need, we just let Alt go and we place it accordingly. Tip number 3, rotating your blueprint. As we've noticed there already, we can maneuver the blueprint quite easily. We can do square brackets by themselves on the keyboard, but we already have assigned the square brackets to the mouse. So I'm just going to use this, and in particular it's useful if we want to go through another blueprint. So if we place blueprint and then we scroll to the base eco unit that I've got set up, then we can easily put that on its side and get it into the nook that we need it to be very quickly. Then we need to build another one. Done. You will have to practice with this quite a lot to get smooth with it. It's not intuitive. In the end, it means you can quickly select something, get to the right blueprint and put it down quickly. Something like this blueprint here, we have to use a T2 and a T1 constructor, by the way. That's why things are in the yellow. Needs a T2 constructor for that. So those are the hotkey setups that you require. Tip number 4, to save a blueprint. So obviously these blueprints didn't come out of thin air. We've had to save it at some point. We can just sort of select it by this or this and just sort of save that big mess as is. But I recommend being a little bit more careful and selecting each constituent part of the blueprint. These don't matter so much because your T1 constructor will be doing something different anyway. But let's say originally we wanted perhaps that many, so that's 24. And then we also wanted to start off with an APHIS with our T2 constructor. And then we wanted to come over here and build some energy converters, right? And then we go back to the APHIS and it will build it all out in that order. And then we simply click Save Blueprint and it will go in as, like, let's say number 9 if you have 8 blueprints. Unfortunately, you can't reorder them. It tacks on to the end. The hotkey for this is Alt-C, but it's just easier quite often to hit Save Blueprint. Something else about build order as well, make sure you don't get your constructor stuck in any of these, like in this place here where there's a space. If you don't get the order right, the constructor will get stuck. Also be aware your constructor will get stuck on some blueprints. If I build this up against the side, right, the constructors will often get stuck. If I built it like this, they can then go around the sides. So that is something to contemplate with different blueprints. You may need to build it a little bit offset from the side of the map. When saving blueprints, you just do need to be aware sometimes you're going to have a partial blueprint that you can put down. Now we're in this crowded base. We want to put down a super eco blueprint. Well, we might not have complete space where we want to. Let's make sure we don't sacrifice the constructor turrets because they're critical to getting this up quick. And because this is energy converter heavy, we can afford for a couple of those to not be built. So we're just going to build that right here. And for whatever reason we want to keep the metal storage, that's cool. Also we can come in, if I want to build an air lab say, I can actually override it, these energy converters, with an air lab before they've been built. So that's something else to consider as well. If you just want to quickly APM wise get out your blueprint and then jury rig another modification to it. So that was some pretty high level stuff, huh? Well, get your hand on this next nebulous nib of knowledge, and that is what to build. I recommend first of all a rule of thumb for blueprints. Do it to save your actions per minute, your APN, but equally do not waste resources over much. I present my noob starter kit of 3 blueprints. The first is this micro eco blueprint getting constructed. Keep a wind turbine width between each blueprint so they don't chain react, also for pathing for your units. What are the advantages? They've got an ideal wind to energy converter ratio. Usually they're slightly energy conversion heavy, but it's not over much. When an energy converter costs 1 metal, you might as well slightly overbuild it. Also, it's a good way to utilise your spare constructors so you don't have that build power sitting around going to waste. It's stupidly cost efficient. On a decent wind map like Supreme Isthmus, it'll produce over 1 metal per 100 metal spent on average. Compare that to T2 APHIS economy, which will produce 1 metal per 260 metal on average, and you have to wait for the APHIS to be built. So that return on income is actually quite considerable. That effective return on income loses you quite a lot of metal and makes it even more expensive. So this is an absolute ideal micro eco unit. Then over here for the next blueprint is the Mega T1 Eco. I've designed it to contain exactly 100 items, which is the maximum by the way. Quite often when you use this blueprint, it will not all quite fit into the space. That's okay as long as the critical items, basically the constructor turrets and the lab, are built. That's the main pieces of this. Why do I put a lab on a T1 Eco? Because we're not letting this 420 metal go to waste. It will in about 10 minutes time, because that's how long this takes for one constructor to build it. It will start producing grunts or ticks or resbots or constructors, a variety of units that you need to function throughout the whole game. It's always great to have that spam on hand. And you might only build 2 of these, you might build 4 of them, but either way you're going to be very appreciative to have the decentralized economy and production that this affords you. The third eco unit that I have in my blueprints is the T2 APHIS Scaling Pack 4. I'm showing an example here which is slightly heavy on the T2 converters. The reasoning behind these T2 converters having 6 rather than 5 per APHIS is they're slightly more efficient and will take over from the T1 converters we have everywhere. So overall there's really no efficiency loss. Here I'm going to produce 4 APHIS, as with it we have the proper wind turbine farm of 24. This can build an APHIS in between the 60-second and 90-second window that we're looking for to make sure it's efficient enough to come online early. I've found 24 turrets to be the minimum amount viable for building APHISes, otherwise you might as well stick with reactors, because how much faster the reactors are built, they're actually a more efficient unit in the end than the APHIS, with the APHIS's only advantage being is they squeeze into this little space here. So they're quite space efficient. This blueprint is super vulnerable to bombers, so put this right back as far as you can from the front line and build plenty of anti-air to protect it. If need be, use self-destruct of the wind turbines, Control B of the original blueprints in this part of the base just to get rid of them. I find this easier than reclaiming, but if you are a planning and APM god, sure, use those constructor turrets to reclaim the area, but it just may take a good long time, meanwhile your APHISes aren't getting built. But if you do need to reclaim all the wind turbines, while you have your constructor turret selected, press Alt E and hover it over the units with your mouse you want reclaimed. By the way, when making a huge turret forest such as this, make sure to utilise it with some T1 labs, an experimental lab, or utilise the build power with a T2 air lab, which would be my recommendation because aircraft are very build power heavy while being still rather efficient to produce. Air units are not picky about pathing to get out of your overcrowded mess of a base. Might not be an issue here, which is just a demonstration anyway, but over here in how our base actually looks like, we can see we may be able to put down an air plant here before these energy converters are built, and it can utilise all this build power that's on tap and not wasting it. In fact, you'd probably want to put down 2 different air labs for all this build power. Once you start to get a few T1 labs ready for your construction, a few helpful tips. Always reset the repeat button off and on again for when you get a new lab. You can basically make sure that repeat is then always on. Also, you may want to clear a queue before beginning any new build order, whether it be a tick or a pawn. It can be useful just to start fresh rather than building up a number of random units. Also, we can alt click in with the units, whether it be Lazarus or construction bots, just to make a few. Now just be wary of this alt. If the lab is under construction when you press the alt click, it will actually make it part of the regular build order. So make sure all the labs you press alt on are actually constructed, and then it will only build 3 or so of those numbers that you designate, and then it will continue on with the repeating build. Where I find this particularly useful is getting up a quick, let's say 20 Lazarus to reclaim on the front line, or having construction bots which auto assign their build power onto the lab to just make a little bit extra spam. So we already have 2 constructor turrets at the moment. Even if we get an extra 6 construction bots, it will still not quite max out the amount of pawns I think we're able to make off each and every lab. We do reach a build power threshold of, let's say, 1000, in which the robots will not be able to walk off the lab quick enough to make it really effective to put more build power on the lab. Tip number 6. Static defense blueprints. Now your commander is approaching a tumultuous front line. Well, instead of quickly hurriedly put down some light laser towers to stand by themselves in a haphazard formation, we can simply use this blueprint here to make sure we can build 2 light laser towers with some walls as defense, so it makes them a lot more hardy, especially against rockets. Also, if we just have 2 of them, that means we can scale rather easily and simply select a wider front line if need be, or more depth in defense. Each of these, by the way, is only about 200 metal. Now, let's say we want to make this line even more hardcore. We might be looking at putting down some additional artillery or some such here, and we want more protection than light laser towers. In that case, I recommend this blueprint, which uses the beam towers. And if we build it slightly off center to the light laser towers, it has its own protection. We'll give the light laser towers excellent defenses against rocket bots, while still making sure the light laser towers probably go down first when they get attacked. So we can harden up the front line quite quickly by putting down these beam turret blueprint. To start with, for plain static defenses, I think that's all you need. The reason being, if we want to put down a perimeter camera, a radar, a construction turret, quite often we want to just do these things in a singular fashion so we don't overbuild. Particularly on the front line, where our defences are probably going to die anyway. We want to be very economical there. So I recommend try and keep it simple until you find yourself following a pattern in which you think, okay, this is going to save me some serious APM by doing this. The reason why we build very limited defences at a time is so we can scale it up. And also, we don't really want to be interrupted with some super huge convoluted blueprint on the front line, because the enemy can attack at any time, and we want to be able to pull the constructor right away. So if we've half built a very convoluted blueprint, we're going to be spending a lot of APM and thinking time working out what hasn't been built yet, which is what you don't want. Tip number 7. Zone defense blueprints. So you can be really creative with blueprints, and it's not just for base building. So we've got our plain static defenses, and here we're going to go on something I call the dragon field. we can see a solitary dragon's claw surrounded by dragon's teeth. Building this field in the right place can be a very, very effective area defense, both against spam, tank run-bys, and in general will just disincentivize an opponent pushing on this amount of possible dragon claws. You can always spice this up by spamming quite a few more dragon claws in certain areas of the field you want to deny. This here is possibly a better representation of what this dragon field will look like, and we want to put in a couple of more dragon's claws just to befuddle the opponent. There we go. Good luck getting through this anytime fast. Another creative use of blueprints in denying space to your enemies is by incorporating mines. This is a very effective area defense that you will need a groundhog or similar mine layer to set up. Now, the one thing I didn't realize about mine layers is there's such things as heavy and medium mines as well. So if we've got a choke point where we feel we might get a heavy unit coming through, we can put down some of these heavier mines rather than the light ones to punish, let's say, marauder pushers or razorbacks. They're going to do a really good job. The heavy mines, the light mines though, are good first up. So you might need a few different variations of area defenses to find what works for you. But I assure you, any opponent looking at this will think twice before attacking into it, and hopefully funneling them towards where your units are instead. So by setting up a nasty looking field, you can disincentivize your opponent from attacking from a flank and going in around your units. That is the point of area defense. It can be quite visually menacing, but it can also be psychologically menacing as you get notifications on, oh, there's minefields ahead. You go in there, you start blowing up. You don't know how deep the minefield is, generally speaking. So yeah, I recommend using a combination of both Dragon's Teeth, Mines, and Dragon's Claws to really put the opponent off their game when it comes to attacking your positions. Tip number 8. Utilize all the space. And this is what it will look like in your lane once you have this established economy. All the way up to your front line, not leaving any space to spare. Before you spread out into other players' lanes, please ask beforehand, otherwise you will annoy your teammates, which is not ideal. Offer a small metal payment. You could comment and pin to your neighbour, please, can I use this for wind farm? We'll provide 200 metal. And draw an outline of the map of the proposed region. Now, if you use all the space available to you for eco and area denial, you'll be the blueprint bandit that everyone thinks is a sovereign genius. But all you did was watch this video. Tip number 9. Cortex, Legion and Armada buildings are not interchangeable. So no, your fancy free-range wind turbine only blueprint will not be utilised between the races. You have to build each individually. So try and organise your blueprints in advance. Keep your 5 main Armada blueprints, say, then 5 main Cortex blueprints, and then you can have any squirrely blueprints after that. Tip number 10. Save your blueprints in skirmish games against the computer slowly and meticulously. You will thank yourself for it later. When playing against a skirmish computer, set the computer to inactive so they don't proceed to come forward and blow themselves up on your blueprints. This is how blueprints actually looks like in game, and we can see here producing some tick spam, not costing too much at all. Producing tick spam, you will actually make a small profit from this eco blueprint unit still, and produce all these lovely ticks as well, which is actually saving my bacon in this game as no one else is producing ticks. So that tick spam alone against these starlights has actually forced a withdrawal. Every hit your ticks absorb might just be a hit your teammates' other units don't absorb. Also, it gives the visibility to these units. So for a measly 10 or so metal a second, we are adding quite a lot of value to the front line here on Supreme. Also, it's allowed us to get up close to a 300 metal a second income before the 25-minute mark, all the while producing T3 from a fairly early stage. If you would so like, you could build these windmill units down here, Also over here where there is some space available to you. If you get good with placing these blueprints down on a map like Supreme, you will actually generate 3 times the efficiency of an APHIS and be much further ahead of the other tech player from an early stage. Something to keep in mind and have your build order focus on. Us tech guys, we all tend to go for the APHIS way too early, but the more backbone we can build up with the blueprints means those APHIS will be produced super speedy at around the 20-minute mark, and that's going to catapult us and win us the game. That, my friends, is how you can master blueprints in Beyond All Reason. If you ever want to hit the 10,000 unit limit like I have here, just use blueprints. Efficiently utilising your APM with blueprints means you can scale production and eco to insane levels and put down fast and effective static defences where required. If you enjoyed the video, please support me with a like and subscribe. If you have something to add with respect to blueprints, send me a comment and I'll read and reply to it. Thanks for watching, see you next time.